Joe Ross came in for the Nationals yesterday, didn't end up getting the start because the Nats went with an opener. Matt Grace went 2 perfect innings, and then Joe Ross entered. Bo didn't have his best stuff yesterday.
No, he didn't have his best stuff. He was elevated in the zone, and the Dodgers took advantage of that elevated fastball and was able to actually tee off and get a lot of extra base hits. And when you look at Joe Ross again, you talk about keeping the ball down. You want him to try to find some kind of way to get the ball off the barrel, and you want him to also start to mix in his off-speed pitches. He was not able to keep count leverage, and the Dodgers made him pay.
Didn't have his changeup really incorporated that much. The ball was elevated. He was behind in counts quite often. Not a good recipe for success for Joe Ross, or really any pitcher. After the game, Joe Ross talking about his outing and what wasn't working.
Just leaving the ball up in the zone. I mean, I felt good physically, but just leaving the ball over the plate up in the zone, and they, made me pay for it. Yeah. Didn't really, I don't think I had any walks. I don't think, but yeah, up in the zone is not where you want to be, especially with these guys.
You mentioned maybe you're using both your 4-seam and 2-seam, and he thought maybe you could use one more than the other. I don't know. Are you still figuring out maybe which one of those works better for you, or how would you sort of assess that?
I guess it depends on, the batter. Okay. A lot of lefties in their lineup, I would say more 4-seams than 2-seams with them because they're just more, low ball hitters as lefties in general. So I think it goes batter for batter, but I was more 4-seams today.
I sat with him before I got in here with Paul, and I talked to him about where we're at and what we want him to do. He's having trouble with his slider right now. Yesterday he threw some curveballs that were actually pretty good. So moving forward, we want to kind of eliminate his slider and just continue to work on his curveball. And the biggest thing for me, we talked a lot about pitching down in the zone. When he's effective, to me, he gets a lot more movement balls down than it does up. So we want him his next bullpen. We're going to get him to kind of get the ball down in the strike zone and work from there and see where he's at. His changeup, he threw a couple of good ones yesterday. We want him to be more consistent with his changeup. We talked to him about that. So hopefully, I know Paul and him are going to work his next bullpen session on just keeping the ball down and see where we get from there.
Bo, it's kind of shocking to hear Davey Martinez say that the Nationals want Joe Ross to eliminate his slider, because that's the weapon when he first came up to the major leagues that made him so effective. That wipeout slider, keeping it down in the zone and below the zone. But that pitch hasn't had nearly as much bite over the last year plus than it did earlier on in his career. So why do you think the idea of him eliminating the slider is a good idea?
Well, hitting is all about timing. And when you look at Joe Ross, everything is hard. The fastball is hard, the slider is hard. So there's no speed variation when it comes to the timing of trying to upset the timing of a hitter. This reminds me of Adam Wainwright, who used to be a fastball slider guy, and then they took away his slider, incorporated the 12-6 curveball, and it pretty much changed his entire career. When you look at Joe Ross and his fastball, he has great life to his fastball, even at the top of the zone, in which I think he's still going to be able to use. But when you incorporate the variation in speed and you're able to get a fastball at the top of the zone at 93, 94, and then you get a 12-6 curveball that's probably at 83 or 84,
right.
That is the type of speed differential in which you're going to be looking for him to get the hitters off balance. You saw yesterday, the Dodger hitters were not off balance at all because everything was hard.
And get that changeup implemented a little bit more as well. Let's take a look at what the Nationals' 5th starters have done this season. You're going to see some success, but also some numbers that these guys would like to improve upon. Austin Voth, 4 starts, 1-0 with a 4.35. Eric Fetty has been pretty good at times. Joe Ross, certainly a tough year for him. Kyle McGowan, only 1 start, 5 appearances overall. Jeremy Hellickson, you see at the bottom there, still dealing with that shoulder issue, but has thrown a few bullpens, including one today. Could possibly throw a simulated game on Wednesday, so he's progressing from that shoulder issue and could factor in to the 5th starter conversation down the road. Bo, when you're talking about the 5th starter spot for this Nationals team, we talk a lot about the trade deadline looming and what they might do to improve the bullpen. We've talked all about bullpen. Do you think the Nationals should go ahead and maybe pick up an additional starter as well ahead of the deadline?
Yes, I think when you look at obviously the uncertainty with Max, but also look at what you've gotten from your fifth starter, to me it would make a lot of sense to go out and add to your starting rotation, because worst case scenario, the person that you add that becomes your fifth starter, when you get into the postseason, they would end up in your bullpen anyway, which would then strengthen your bullpen as well. You see the guys in which we have run out there as the fifth starter, obviously they have not been, neither one of them have been able to lock down that spot. That's why you see so many guys being given the opportunity. If there's an opportunity to upgrade this team and satisfy two needs that will have long-term implications, I think adding the starter right now and having that guy move into the bullpen later in the season will be very beneficial.